Hello, Robert.
Hello there.
Um, I'm very happy to introduce you to our listeners. First of all, Robert Radnoti. He is a senior leader with Tony Robbins. And as you all know, I'm a great fan of Tony Robbins. I have attended his event, Unleash the Power Within, last year in London. And about 2 years ago, I also attended Tony Robbins event in Moscow. Secondly, Robert Radnoti is a certified master hypnosist at Radnoti Hypnosis. Robert is also, or has been, a field coach. Robert has a number of degrees from, for example, University of California at Los Angeles. Robert also studied life strategies at Anthony Robbins Mastery University. And I could continue. But now, Robert, please, you tell us a couple of things about yourself. Tell us about your career. Now, I have heard that you are doing your third career. Could you talk about the first and the second one?
Sure. Well, my first career, I was a chemical engineer, actually. I worked for Exxon or Esso worldwide for my first 25 years of life. And that was interesting. It gave me an opportunity to get involved with so many different kinds of areas, and eventually got involved with leadership development and human performance. And that was where I developed a real growth for or love for growth and contribution, and probably led me to the Tony Robbins world. But it wasn't really my passion, chemical engineering. My passion was running and track and field. And I just quit Exxon to become first a high school track coach and then a college track coach. I did that for 22 years. And last April, I left Pepperdine University here in Malibu, California. That's what you're seeing in my background, to become a life coach, senior leader with Tony Robbins, and a hypnotherapist, and really impact people's lives. And it's just been a wonderful journey since.
That's really fantastic. I have watched all the videos on YouTube channel with you. Before we start talking about hypnotherapy, because this is what I am really interested in, could you tell us a few words about what it means to be senior leader with Tony Robbins?
Well, what it means is that essentially, Tony's events have gotten to be so large that Unleash the Power, it's anywhere between 10 and 15,000 we had here in Los Angeles. And Date with Destiny is about between 2,500. I'm getting ready to do that event in Australia next month. And then in Florida, it's about 5,000. And Tony, one of the best things he does is interventions, where he changes people's lives in 30 minutes up to 3 hours, depending on what the issue is. And as a senior leader, we've been trained to do those interventions with people, because Tony can't get to everyone. He can get to a handful of people. And so as a senior leader, we are trained to discover what people's issues is, what's problems, what's holding them back from having an amazing life. And we work with those participants during events to help change their lives kind of really quickly instead of over a long period of time.
Actually, it was just a couple of months after I attended Unleash the Power Within in London. Last year, I started recording Skype interviews. And there were a number of other things which I started doing after I attended that event. I would like to attend the Dating with Destiny. Hopefully one day I will have a chance to do it. Tell me, please, about hypnotherapy. What is hypnotherapy?
Well, first of all, kind of interesting how I got into hypnotherapy. I did it because I wanted to help my athletes, and I wanted to help them break through the mental barriers that might be keeping them back from great performances. But when I entered into this program, I go to a school called HMI, or Hypnosis Mediation Institute, here in California. It's the #1 hypnotherapy school in the world. In fact, Joe Dispenza graduated from there.
Oh,
And so it's kind of a neat thing. There's a lot of famous alumni that graduated from HMI. And hypnotherapy essentially is helping a person with their issues by, we operate at the conscious level, but 88% of our mind is in the subconscious. And we have all sorts of things stored in the subconscious that were programmed there from birth through about puberty that impact the way we show up in today's world. And they cause a lot of suffering. So hypnosis is merely helping a client slip from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind and correct whatever experience is stored there. And we don't know what's stored there. It's in the subconscious, so that they can live better and more fulfilling and joyful lives. So it's very satisfying.
Robert, could you explain for those people who are not familiar with the terms subconscious mind or conscious mind, what they mean?
Okay, so the conscious mind is sort of what you're thinking about when you're thinking about something. So you're knowingly performing an action. So for example, when you first learn to drive a car, you have to, if you recall back, you have to turn the ignition on. And back in the old days when people had stick shifts, you had to shift from gear 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. You had to push the clutch in. You had to put the brake on. You had to turn the steering wheel. So when you initially were learning that, you were at a very conscious level. You had to think about every step. Now today, after many years of driving, you just automatically do it. You don't have to think about turning the ignition or any of those things. It just automatically happens. So that's sort of like the subconscious mind. It's happening without really thinking about what's happening. And we store all these experiences there that we don't know. And then we might do something kind of funny and go like, where'd that come from? Well, it came from your subconscious mind because you're programmed. Another real good example I have is in our family growing up, my dad didn't want to have a dog. And, a lot of families, you have a dog growing up. It's kind of part of life. And he was afraid of dogs. But when you ask him about it, he couldn't tell you why he's afraid of dogs. He just couldn't understand why anyone wouldn't be. And it was a few years later when I was actually in Budapest and talking to a sister and kind of explaining. And she said, oh, well, that's easy. When he was like 5 years old, this dog bit him. And from that point on, he was just afraid of dogs. Well, he doesn't even remember that. It's stored in his subconscious where you don't even know it's stored, but it colors life today. And so that's what every human being has, all these experiences stored in this part of your mind that you don't know exists, but it's 88% of your mind, and they impact the way you show up in life.
For me, very important is creativity. I have published 18 books, over 150 scholarly articles in many languages.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's impressive.
Thank you. And my last book actually was published in England. And my first book was published in California, or not in California, but it was published when I was a Fulbright scholar in California at University of California at Berkeley, a very long time ago. So my question is, among there are many things which you mentioned hypnotherapy is good for. You mentioned creativity. So how can creativity be improved with the help of hypnotherapy?
Well, that's a really interesting topic and one that I'm passionate about, because I think what happens, and this is probably a really good example, is that as we're growing up, all of us have teachers or parents or people in our lives that say things to us, well-intentional. And oftentimes, or sometimes maybe, we might have maybe made a drawing, an art drawing when we were a little kid, and someone in a more of an authoritarian position might have said, that's not very good. Or we wrote something and said, oh, you know, that's not very good. And our subconscious holds that. All it remembers is, I can't draw, I can't write, I can't sing, I can't perform. And our subconscious remembers it. And as we become adults, we oftentimes don't then write or draw or sing or dance, whatever forms of creativity we might have, because of something that an adult told us when we were in our formative stages. So the power of hypnosis would be to actually go into that subconscious and say, using a lot of different techniques. You're familiar with NLP and a few other
yes. I have a certificate in NLP, and I have a certificate in Erickson hypnosis.
Exactly. So there's about 20 or 30 or 40 different kinds of techniques that can be used in hypnosis. So you might think of hypnosis as sort of like you're in this dream state. You're awake, you're aware of what's going on, but it might be likened to when you first wake up in the morning or right before you go to sleep. It's when your mind is most suggestible to thoughts and ideas from the hypnotherapist. And so the concept of creativity is one that actually can be extremely developed through the use of hypnosis by helping the client go into that hypnotic state and talking about using, whether it's NLP or Ericksonian techniques, to then open up that creativity and reprogram the brain. Essentially, you're reprogramming the brain. Now, you can't really make someone do something they don't want to do, but if they want to become creative, hypnosis is a wonderful technique to use to do that.
But for example, I myself, when I write a book or books, I sometimes feel angry with myself when I cannot reach the state of flow.
Okay.
Because I mean, sometimes you just wake up and everything is great, and I follow a number of techniques Tony Robbins gives us, 100 jumps many times a day, and many other things. So, and for example, sometimes I just feel, oh my God, why am I not more intelligent? So why am I not more creative? And this is somehow something which I would like to get more. I'm sure that a number of other people would like to get more of creativity. Do you mean that like hypnosis gives you more freedom, frees yourself?
Yes. Well, one thing just real quickly, there's a book called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And it's a really wonderful book that I might suggest to you to take a look at for opening up your creativity. She's got a very interesting process that she uses. I think it's sort of like self-hypnosis, but it's really a wonderful tool. And I actually followed that process a couple years ago. And I was one of those that someone must have said something when I was young, because I never played a musical instrument or did art or wrote. And literally within the next year, I started painting. I took a writing class from James Patterson. I published my first book now. I've got 6 more on the way. I bought myself an electric guitar and started playing guitar.
Wow.
And, just the power of the mind is so amazing. And if you recall back to Tony Robbins, the triad, anytime you want to change something, you change your state, you change your physiology first, your language, and your focus. And the first step to that is sort of recognizing that you need or want to change your state. If you want to become more creative, you can become creative. Part of it is you got to change your focus and your language, and you could do that.
Actually, you have just mentioned painting. I myself, when I was a small girl, I was very good in this, and afterwards, for many years, I didn't do it. until I got a Fulbright scholarship, and I spent almost 1 year together with my daughter. We were sharing a house in Oakland, a house with an artist. Her name was Barbara. And suddenly, after so many years or decades of not painting, my daughter, I just thought that why don't we paint? And we started painting together with my daughter, and it was just amazing. And afterwards, a couple of years later, I started painting. Actually, I have it now here. It is just a kind of votive, and for almost 10 years, I did a lot of voitives, and they painted some glasses, and it was just absolutely amazing. And sometimes really you just do not understand how it happens, and you are in some kind of surroundings, as it was with me in California. So when we spent many months together with an artist, and afterwards you just start painting it. I want to ask you a question concerning fears. So I see that you work with a number of fears, like fear of death, of animals, even fear of dentists, fear of doctor, of failure of flying, of heights, fear of loss of control, fear of surgery, and even fear of water. So I do not have any fears of this, but could you tell me how you work with these fears?
You don't have any fears.
No, I do have fears, but not these ones.
Yeah.
Not these ones. Not these ones.
Yeah. So again, the way to work with fear, that's one of the more powerful things. And most people have a fear, and most people's fear is a fear of not being good enough. And that's
I have this fear. So
everyone does.
That I'm not good enough. That I do not ask good enough questions now.
Well, everyone is good enough just the way they are. And that's a really, really important belief to develop in a client, quite truthfully. And again, under hypnosis, we just deepen the client to go to a place. And I like to take them to a place where it's sort of their sanctuary. And then we use the words of the client for how they do want to feel. So you got it. It's just like the visioning process. How do you want to feel? You want to feel confident. You want to feel creative. You want to feel disciplined. You want to feel courage. You want to feel all those things. And under hypnosis, what we do is then we implant those into that subconscious, into that part of the brain that when you're not thinking will then come back up, and you will automatically feel that way. It's a very, very powerful. And quite truthfully, when you took your daughter and you were in that environment with the artist, essentially what you're doing is you put her into a hypnotic state. So hypnotic state is just being unaware and in a place where your mind is very moldable, very reprogrammable. And it's really important that you understand and your audience understands that you're in charge of your own life. You can create however you want to create your own life. You can do that through hypnosis. You could do it through self-hypnosis. You could do it through Tony Robbins or any number of areas. But the important part is just to make that choice that I want to be a better version of myself and be more joyful and lead a more fulfilled life. And once you've made that choice, the world becomes your playground.
Yes, that sounds absolutely fantastic. And could you tell me, you have just explained about this fulfillment. And at the beginning of the interview, you said that you didn't really like your job of an engineer.
Well, it was challenging. It wasn't what I was passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't what I was passionate about. I'm passionate about running and coaching people. And I think one of the things that happened is that I became a really good coach at the mental side of training. And now I've expanded that to, I don't need to limit that to runners. Now I work with people all over the world and help them achieve whatever goals they might have. Not necessarily in running, but in life. There's two things that we like to teach: is the science of achievement, which is kind of easy to teach, but truthfully, there's a lot of good strategies around that. But the art of fulfillment, that's one that I'm really into. I want people to be very joyful naturally, without having to force it, without it just being on the outside, but on the inside. I've discovered how to be very joyful, and I want to share that with everyone and free them up so that they can live an amazing life. That's what hypnotherapy has been able to do for me, and through the senior leader world at Tony Robbins and many of the other things that I've gotten myself involved with now.
It sounds just absolutely fantastic. And can one be successful and also happy and fulfilled? Because very frequently, my experience is that there are some people who might be very successful at something. Maybe they are financially very successful, but they are not happy at all. So
that's a lot of people, it turns out. And one of the reasons, I think, is that their whole focus was on that, and they didn't focus on fulfillment. They didn't learn the techniques and the strategies to be able to do that. And that's why, quite truthfully, that's why Tony's so successful now, and many personal development programs are, because people are seeking that. And more and more people are like me are popping up and saying, yeah, that's going to be our focus. And so we're really changing and impacting the lives of many people, which then will change the world. And that's what we all want to do, right? Change the world for the better.
yes,
That's what you're doing.
Yes, I also, I try to do it actually by recording interviews. I haven't recorded too many interviews in English, so this is like maybe my sixth interview in English, but I have recorded about 17 Russian language, primarily on self-development, on relationships, and on fulfillment as well. Robert, now before we finish the interview, what would you like to say at the very end to those who are going to watch us on YouTube channel or on the Facebook?
Oh, well, I'm not sure I understood the question, but I guess my advice to people would be is that there's two types of mindset: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And if you have lived most of your life with a fixed mindset that you don't want things to change, they won't. And that you're probably in for a lot of suffering in your life. And if you want to become more joyful, find bliss, find fulfillment, work to develop a growth mindset and continually be looking for how are you going to develop. My journey is unique. Your journey is unique. Each person's journey is very unique. And just open up your mind and be receptive to what's happening for you, because the universe or God or whatever you believe in is here working for you, not to you. Life is happening for you, and it's always out there. And when you open up your eyes and your ears and you are aware that life is happening for me, amazing things will happen. Just watch for it and then take action.
Thank you very much. I have workshops on growth mindset. So
great.
This is I think this is really terrific that every teacher should teach it to his or her children. But unfortunately, the vast majority of teachers do not have such a mindset. So
that's why people like you are so important. We got to help people create outstanding or spectacular lives. I like that word, spectacular.
Spectacular, yes. And actually what I like about Tony Robbins, when he talks about extraordinary, so he talks about extraordinary life. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Robert, thank you very much for your time. I hope that I will be able to record some other interviews with you, because I have a number of questions which you have just raised. So if you have time, I will contact you.
Sure. It's an honor. And I wish you the best, and keep doing magical, wonderful, extraordinary things in your life.
Thank you.